Hello, and welcome to Universally Challenged, the podcast where we do cultural criticism from a biblical perspective. Yay! I don't think I'm going to mess anything up this week. I'm going to try not to mess anything up this week. I got Scooter back with me. Unfortunately, y'all missed his insights from the last podcast we did because I didn't record them. I think I went over that in the last podcast I did with Silas, but once again, Scooter, I apologize.
Right.
That there's emails going around where people are thinking you're threatening to leave the show over it and stuff. If you would dispel those rumors.
I have no plans at this moment.
Oh, okay.
Leaving.
I didn't know if you were going to go wherever Tucker Carlson's going to be next, you know. Did you hear about that?
No.
Oh, you didn't hear? He's gone from Fox.
I didn't know that.
I don't really know all the details behind it. I think they're kind of sparse. Some people, what's the guy that, is it Bernie Murdoch or whatever his name is that run Fox? Some people said he didn't want him there anymore. To me, I kind of doubt that because I have a feeling he's their most popular person.
Well, he's got the highest rated show, from what I understand.
To be honest here, I know we're doing cultural criticism, but I don't watch the news. I don't like it, okay?
Could this have something possibly to do with the next presidential election?
That's what somebody else was suggesting. I don't know if all the details are out yet. And by the way, guys, this news just broke yesterday. So when you hear this, it's probably going to be several weeks from now and we're going to be behind. You're going to know all the details behind this. So don't be too harsh on us for not knowing all the information right now. Some people are saying it could have something to do with some stuff he said about Trump, or did he say something? I almost heard him say that he said something Trump didn't like. And some people are thinking, well, Trump doesn't want him there. As far as I know, Trump doesn't run that network.
I don't think he has that type of pull. But, you know, he's been doing a lot over the last year of these personal interviews, his own team investigating certain. So maybe that's where he's headed to.
Oh, Tucker's into his own network?
Or just maybe his own.
See, I wondered about that. I wonder if it's not a money dispute, because I just really have a hard time thinking if he did. Oh, hold on. Maybe I heard something about, sexism's involved or something. He didn't have a female co-host. There was no.
But who does at night? No one.
He didn't bow down and lick the high heels of somebody.
Maybe.
You know, I don't know what the deal is there, but if you can point a finger at somebody and say sexism and they lose their job, that's an issue. But I have a feeling he's going to come out better on the end of this. There's too many other organizations. I mean, the Daily Wire. You don't think they would love to add Tucker Carlson into their network? I mean, there's all sorts. Newsmax, probably. I don't know how much pull they've got. And I would think there's things like Rumble that I personally don't. I think I've got a Rumble somewhere. I don't really look at it. But it seems to be more of a free speech YouTube type platform where more conservatives are on it. You would think maybe they might pull something like Spotify did with Joe Rogan.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe he has aspirations of being the next Rush Limbaugh type.
Yeah, maybe. He's one of those guys. I mean, maybe I'm over exaggerating his pool, but I almost feel like he could form his own network like you talked about earlier.
Well, of course, you know, he came from the other side.
Yeah, he did.
And he moved up rather quickly on the conservative side.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't watch the news. I get my news from the real people on YouTube where they know what's going on. You know, they know what's going on in the underbelly. But when I do see news clips and whatnot, Tucker's one of the ones that if I was going to watch a show on Fox, that's the one I'd probably watch right there. I don't know. I mean, we all know Fox is the Christian news network, right? That's the one. If you're a Christian, you watch Fox News, right?
Most of them do anyway.
Oh, yeah. That's what they say anyway. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I didn't know if you'd heard about that. I saw a twit about it the other day. So, you see anything interesting in the news this week?
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Oh, yeah?
You know, it's transgender.
Oh, yeah.
You know, homophobia. What else can you throw in there? Crime everywhere.
And I think it's all just distracting us from the fact that our country's tanking and the dollar's being replaced. I need to start looking into that a little bit.
Oh, the president is supposed to announce his running for Re-election
yeah, I
again
saw
today.
that. I saw that. He was talking about something about pushing out Easter eggs or something. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
He said they were asking him at the Easter egg hunt something about the eggs, and he said, "I'll either be rolling them out or pushing them out." And I don't know what that meant at all. Yeah,
I doubt he does either. But
yeah. I don't think he knew where he was, to be honest with you.
I would agree with that.
Dude, my fear right now, I hate to say this because I don't want to get super political. I'm definitely not picking candidates. But I know that the regime we're under right now does not benefit us as a country. It does not. Identity politics rules in his group. He doesn't want anybody that can fix anything or has a thought or knows anything about economics. It matters more that they were born with male genitalia and now they don't have it anymore. Well, now you're in my cabinet. You're a great thinker. The most confused people in the world are running us right now. So I'm not saying a political party over another political party. I'm not picking a candidate. I just know that the current candidate can't stand. He's anti everything that's good for the most part. So when I say that, I'm not upholding one party over the other party, but I'm afraid that they're going to actually not run him again. That's my fear right now, because I want him to run Biden again. He's the worst possible candidate they can run. Now, my other fear is that they're going to run him, he's going to win again. And what does that say about our country?
A lot of it has to do, and you're right, that says a lot about the country,
Yeah.
but a lot of it also has to do about who his opponent would be.
Yeah.
So you see the lapse in morality in this country,
Yeah.
but you also see a dependence upon government, which kind of goes along with that. And so I'm kind of like you. I don't think that he could beat whoever the Republican candidate is again.
Yeah.
But he would definitely have a puncher's chance if it was Trump.
Libertarian candidate, heck, at this point, a Green Party candidate. I just think give somebody else a shot at this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a cousin that's pretty smart. I mean, they might be able to. I got a lot of cousins, so just assume I'm talking about you, whoever's listening to this. Yeah, anything other than Biden. I mean, he's not good for the country right now. Every time you see something where they're trying to catch Biden on something, I really think it's his own party trying to catch him. I really do. I don't think Republicans or whoever is trying to go after Biden so that he can't run again.
And you may be right. The problem for the Democrats is there's really no one there. Who are you going to run? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of names that always pop up, but I don't see them being victorious. You take Gavin Newsom out in California. I don't see how he could carry a general election.
The people in his state don't like him. Of course, they're all moving out of there. Record numbers.
I mean, Bernie Sanders would actually be a viable candidate because he at least would have the ear of a big part of the liberal and the Democratic movement.
You're talking about to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee?
But once again, the whole problem is can you win a general election?
Well,
and I don't think he could.
I hope not. I hope not. I'm not a Bernie bro here. You're right. But he could probably put two sentences together, which Biden can't do.
Sure.
You know, that's a problem. I mean, he's definitely looks like a puppet. You know, he looks like he's on strings when he's walking. Half the time somebody has to hold his hand to lead him where he's going. Now, I realize this stuff happens as you get older. And there's nothing wrong with getting older and needing help from people. But that's not the person that needs to be running our country. I know Ronald Reagan was an old man when he did it. And I know towards the end they were hiding some of his dementia and stuff he had going on. But when you heard him speak, he didn't mumble his words. He had clear, coherent thoughts that made sense. You know, I'm not an ageist. I think old people have things that they're way wiser than we are. They've been through more stuff. And if they're still capable, I'm all for an older president. But Biden's obviously on the other end of it.
Yeah, and there's a big difference, too. I mean, Trump is around the same age.
Yeah.
But like you said, the mental acuity, there's a big difference in between how one reacts versus the other. And I heard a funny quip last night on the Gutfeld show.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name who said it, so Google Gutfeld, go watch that so he gets credit for it. This is not coming from me. Mm-hmm. But he said there's two types of 83 or 84-year-old men. Mm-hmm. It's ones that tell you, I need to go to the bathroom, and ones that tell you that I just went to the bathroom.
No,
and I thought that was... You know, that's kind of what we're saying.
And Biden may not tell you either.
Well,
I shouldn't say that about him.
But I mean, it's funny. But if you think about it, it's true. We talk about the mental acuity.
Yeah.
You know what it takes up here to function. If you're running the United States, like you said about Reagan,
Yeah.
later on, that's just a process of aging. Go back to FDR. You know, a lot of people said the last couple of years of his presidency that the First Lady was really the one that was running the show. So these things happen. We're not making.
You're also looking at a country during that time that didn't get to see the inside workings of what was going on. I mean, there's like
didn't
a
have
few
the social media and all
there's
the
a
other
few
stuff.
videos of FDR that are pretty famous that are out there, but for the most part, they kept a lot of his stuff hidden, and they were able to do it. Nowadays, you can't hide as president.
And you can't. And one thing that I do agree with you when you talk about his own party maybe trying to be involved in some of this, you just don't see very much of him, and that's on purpose because I think they know he's more of a liability in front of a camera.
Oh yeah,
than he is to be hidden.
But you can't hide people nowadays because people have cell phone footage. Anytime you're out and about, somebody's recording you. I mean, I don't think there's a camera in this room looking at us right now, but
Never know.
You never know. I assume you're always on camera nowadays, so you got to be careful about that stuff. And speaking of Trump, who's the possible candidate to run against him, I think under Trump, we were a prosperous country. I do feel like he is America first. Just in my opinion, he's all for American superiority, and I think he's going to do the things that help our economy. But he's not our Christian solution. He's not our Christian savior. Most of the Christian groups that he associates with are kind of like faith healing type, because he doesn't know the difference. I don't think he knows the difference between different types of Christianity and what's right and what's wrong in that instance. So I'm not heralding Trump as like the morally superior person. I would prefer someone else. But in politics, I don't know if you find too many just like genuine Christian politicians, but I would go towards the candidate whenever I'm looking at voting that's going to secure our rights as Christians to practice and have free speech and to share the gospel. And I have a feeling that we would be less hindered under a different regime. How about that? Did I say too much to say one thing?
No, I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Once again, we're not endorsing a candidate, and we're way far away from the election, but maybe by the time you hear this, it'll be election day. When this one posts, I don't know. Something else I was seeing in the news this week was, did you hear about the CVS thing?
Which one is that?
Well, there's a lot of things with CVS, a lot of things with like the abortion pill and things like that, where they're really fighting to make sure they can mail that out to people in states that they don't, want to allow it and whatnot. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about they have a new CVS employees must address transitioning coworkers by their preferred pronouns and names. And they're given lots of education on this. Now, that may be the case at my work as well. I don't know. I mean, we watch those videos, that tell you how to be sensitive to. You do a lot of training because you change hospitals a lot. Is that like a big part of your training whenever you go into new hospitals?
It hasn't got to where you would think it would be at this point in time. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is sensitivity training, but it still kind of sticks with the old model, the pronouns and things of the nature that we are used to dealing with. Of course, a lot on racial diversity and integration and things like that.
Which you would think at this point, do we really need education on not being racist
or a hostile work environment and all the other stuff.
Like, you understand the person who works with you may have a different color skin, Do not be shocked by this fact.
Another 2-hour clip on how to properly wash your hands. And
yes. Well, I get that. You work in healthcare. They want to make sure, and they know that you know this, but they're trying to make sure they cover themselves for if you're using dirty hands on a patient and they get an infection, they're going to say, we showed them the video on that. And maybe it's just that same way when it comes to how to treat your coworkers and racial issues and stuff. But I almost feel like the fact they're bringing it up could cause a problem.
But they're just following guidelines that's been mandated.
They are, and they're trying to keep themselves from being sued. So I'm going to cut them a little slack there. But let's see what CVS is saying here. Because this may be pushing to a point where I don't know if I could go. Because this is pushing to a point where they're giving this person special rights that you don't have. And if they think you're violating this person's rights, it sounds like you could lose your job here. Let me just read some of this article for you. It says CVS has set up gender transition guidelines for its workers to follow. And like we said, lots of places set this stuff up. The U.S. Care Company that owns the retail CVS pharmacy, among other brands, has instructed its employees to address colleagues who are transitioning by their preferred pronouns and names. Fox News reported. That's a Fox News thing. The guide section on guidelines for supporting a colleague who is transitioning encourages employees to be an ally by asking colleagues to let them know if they say or do anything that makes them uncomfortable. So I'm supposed to go up to this person who's transitioning and tell them, please, if there's anything I say, any word, just let me know that I'm making you uncomfortable. Man, I get made uncomfortable by statements people make all the time at work.
All the time.
If it's not anything illegal, what are you supposed to do with it?
I don't know, but I do agree. You said the word, and we talked about it before. It's no longer equal rights in this country. It's all special rights. Yeah. And that's the fall down of when you bring, I don't even want to get into this. This is a topic for another show, but if we talk about civil liberties and things like that.
No, I think this has definitely turned into a civil liberties issue
but there's no civil liberty anymore in their definition of these people that push this agenda. It's neither civil nor is it promoting liberty. You're actually, what we said, special rights. You're actually taking your beliefs, your rights, what you want, your desires, your intolerance, and forcing it on the rest of the population. And it's just not, it's not right. Forget about fair. It's not right.
Well, they're saying in accordance to the company's anti policy. You know, they've got all these big policies. It's also suggested that employees not make assumptions about an individual's gender and become an ally rather than being an inclusive leader and champion of diversity, as it makes a positive impact on the coworker's life. They're making an assumption that this is going to be positive for this other person.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, really. How are you supposed to know what to call them? Are they supposed to wear a name tag?
Well, if I don't make an assumption, that means everybody I come up to, I can either say to you he or she. I can't even say they, because that could offend you as well.
Sure.
So I'm going to have to ask you. I'm assuming that their badges are going to involve pronouns on it. I'm thinking they are, and you're going to have to look at it. And I think they're going to get into that down here. Let me see. The policy asks transgender employees to include their preferred pronouns in their email signatures, introduce their preferred pronouns in meetings and introductions. I'm Zach. I am cisgendered, whatever that means. No, let's just... That seems silly, man. Did you see but I know we're in the middle of this. Did you see the Microsoft thing where the people were standing up and they're like, I am Emily. I go with she, her pronouns. I am wearing a blue dress. I am 5'5", and I'm a white female or whatever, because they were worried that there might be people out there that couldn't see them, that they were discriminating against by not describing their clothes and stuff.
We just
it's insanity,
crazy.
Man. Okay, they're going to put it in their emails and introduce their preferred pronouns in meetings and introductions, and let their coworkers know they won't tolerate even subtle forms of discrimination or harassment in the workplace. That is very subjective. Mm-hmm. So how do we know what this subtle? Does it mean I said your pronoun, but I kind of rolled my eyes when I said it? You know,
I think so.
I didn't say it with a smile on my face. Once a transgender staffer makes known their preferred pronouns and name, their colleagues are advised not to refer to them by their other pronouns, their pronouns, or their dead names, previous names. We all know that term now. Some terms are universally considered disrespectful and violate CVS's policy against discrimination and harassment. The guides. Terms like transgender, trans, male/trans, female, non-binary, or male or female should be used, it instructed. So I don't quite understand what did you understand that statement? I didn't understand it either. I guess it's part of their policy that you can use those terms, but you have to use them as the other people want to hear them, I guess. Transgender employees and all those who are transitioning can also use whichever restroom or changing room that corresponds with their gender identity. Something all workers or customers or patients, transgender or otherwise, should determine the most appropriate for themselves. So it's not just limited to employees there. You walk into the CVS, you want to go into the female bathroom or the female changing room and just stand in the middle of the room. I mean, if you feel like that's what you want to do, I guess, huh?
Somebody just did that in like a female locker room either yesterday or the day before. 18-year-old walked in and started showering among some girls.
Yeah. Well, you've heard that woman, that Gaines woman, the swimmer, talk about being Leah Thomas just walking in, taking off her bathing suit and having male genitalia in front of all these women while they're all changing clothes, and how they didn't like that, but nobody cared. It was all about promoting this person's view and how they felt, and didn't care about the other women in there or ask them if it was okay with them. I almost think if you're going to push this transgender agenda, that it would be better to have their own locker room for transgender people, but they don't want that because they're not something different. They're a woman. It wouldn't validate them. They have to validate Leah Thomas, but they don't care if these women are being validated.
Well, they don't care about validation on their end. They want you to validate them.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Validation has to come from us.
Yes.
And we validate it by going, okay, it's perfectly fine. Well, how many trans men that still have women body parts you think are wanting to walk into men's dressing rooms and change their clothes? I say zero. And you have probably about only 1% of the male population that would complain about it. But the other way around, we know that a male is probably a lot more dangerous to a female in those situations than a female is to a man. I mean, this is common sense.
It's common sense. It's the double standards. It's reverse discrimination.
Yeah.
It's whatever you want to look at it. We'll get to the swimmer again, but we were going to talk about good legislation at some point in time.
We're getting there, Scooter. I'm sorry.
But
since we talked about
this
that
is going to
last
backfire. That's my whole point. This is going to, it can't do anything but backfire. So that's what scares me.
What kills me is the liberal guys are like, she can go in that. She's a girl. She can go in there, talking about these guys, that are women. Wait till they get a 6-year-old little girl of their own that's going into a changing room and changing, and they see some dude walk in there with her. I don't think they're going to like that.
No.
I think they're going to have a hard time keeping their mouth shut about it at that point, because you don't want your little kid off in a room with someone who is perverted, which I got question on who determines what's well, they didn't say who determines what was perverted this week. They were talking about Madonna at work, and one girl said that she couldn't watch Madonna as a kid because her mom wouldn't let her. And I said, well, she was kind of a pervert. That's what I said. Well, why are you saying that? Who says what's being pervert? Because the other person said she was just ahead of her time. And I'm like, well, I don't determine what perverted is. God determines what perverted is. And I'm thinking, you're saying she's not perverted, but if right now at work I was to dress up like the dancers, or wear some of the costumes she was wearing and get in the floor and start doing some of the stuff they were doing, their motions and stuff, they would tell me I was being inappropriate and get fired. You know what I'm talking about? But anyway. Yeah, you obviously don't want a pervert walking into a dressing room with your 6-year-old girl. The guide also lists what terms are acceptable: transgender, cisgender, gender dysphoria, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender identity, and what is unacceptable: transgenders and transgendered. You can't say either of those. I don't know. In my brain, I don't hear a difference between what was above. Oh, you can say transgender, but you can't say transgenders, and you can't say transgendered. I don't know. Transgender employees also have the right to be who they are without unnecessary disclosure of medical information and general history. Something I missed in here, and I know I read it earlier. Maybe this is why we're confused about the article, because I must have missed something. There was a thing about them being able to take off for whatever health care they needed. If they were getting hormone replacement, if they were getting necessary gender-affirming care done, they could take off work and, not have any consequences for it or whatever. I couldn't tell if they were saying it was paid or not. Mm-hmm. This is basically an unsurprising article I'm reading to you. This is where we assume most businesses are going, right?
A lot of them, anyway.
Yeah. I just think it puts you in a bad spot, because I've worked with transgendered employees. I don't know if everybody has. It's still kind of a new thing. But it kind of reminds me of whenever I became more of an adult and I was working different jobs and I'd work with gay people for the first time. I don't know if I'm sure you've been there too, and as like a high school kid, like I knew some people that were kind of gay, but they kept it under the, they stayed in that closet because it was not acceptable whenever I was in school. But then I get a job like waiting tables, and you start realizing, hey, this person's gay, that person's gay. And you learn kind of how to work that relationship because you want to be able to work with the people. Mm. But working with transgender people, I've worked with transgender people. I got along fine with them. I just used their name. I didn't use pronouns. But it sounds like here, what they're trying to do is force you to play the game. You're supposed to approach them and ask them if there's anything you can do to make them feel comfortable. You're supposed to ask them what the pronouns are, and you're required to use those pronouns. And if you do anything that looks like you're not enjoying what you're doing, it looks like you could lose your job over this.
Yeah, and that's exactly where it's headed to.
Yeah, that's not a good situation.
Well, like you said, it's subjective. Who gets to say that this is offensive? Mm-hmm. And what recourse do I have?
Yeah.
And what I prefer to be called, what I want to go by, and what I deem as biologically correct from a biblical perspective.
Yes.
How is that offensive to you?
Yeah, but they don't care. They don't care if it's offensive to you. That's a world upside down, Scooter. And I can work with a transgender person, and I can get along with them just like I can anybody else I get along with. But I will not be compelled to say words that I don't believe are true. And at some point, you have to draw a line. I'm not going to go in there, look at an obvious guy, and say that they're a woman. I'm not going to do it. Now, I can work with an obvious guy dressed like a woman, treat them just like I treat everybody else, and be nice to them. But you're not going to compel my speech to say something that's not true. It's not going to happen. I may go to jail one day for something like this, but this is not.
And that's how warped our society is, because you can't be. It's impossible to be a voice of reason in a world that's devoid of truth, because you sound like the lunatic.
Yes.
And it's just taking everything and flipping it upside down.
I hate that when you're in a discussion with people and you're saying the most sane thing ever, the most reasonable thing that everybody should be able to agree with, and they're all looking at you like, what are you talking about? And then they're looking at each other and shaking their heads like, what, shrugging their shoulders, making weird faces like they don't know what you're saying. And you're looking around like, where am I off here? What's going on? Everybody's just like, making faces because they don't like the truth that you just said.
They don't.
And it makes you feel insane. Like, what am I missing here?
Yeah, and even the ones that may agree with you, they'll remain silent because they know the repercussions.
Oh, yeah.
And that's wrong. It's just wrong.
I've got a son who falls into that situation at school. If what he tells me is true, which I don't think he's lying to me, but, perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's perceiving it in a way that it is or not, but evidently they allow them to have pretty open discussions about things. But to me, the teacher puts him in a bad spot sometimes. It'll just be simple things like, who believes that the male is still the leader in the household or whatever, or should be the leader in the household? Well, stand up. Well, he'll be the only one that stands up. Well, then all the other kids yell at him about it and stuff, and the teacher's promoting open discussion by letting them say whatever they want to, and he'll try to say something. He says people tell him shut up and listen and stuff in a classroom.
Now, is this a debate class or is this
it's not
math class?
It's like an English class. Or like the other day, he said he was having a personal conversation with another guy, and the guy was asking him questions about the Bible because he's always trying to talk to people about the Bible and witness to people. And he made a statement. I'm not going to say what the statement is. I'm not getting off in something even more controversial, but it is something that might rub somebody the wrong way, but it is a strong biblical truth. Well, one of the girls heard it and starts coming in and getting on him about it. That's not true and all this stuff. And then he said another girl who really likes to yell at him come over and what's he saying, whatever, and starts talking. He said he's trying to say, well, where do you get what you're saying from? Because I've told him, ask questions. Don't just try to answer back to all their stuff. And the girl told him she doesn't have to look that up in the Bible because it's in the Bible. And all this stuff. She knows it's in there. You're telling me that's not in there. It's in there. I'm not going to tell you where it is because she doesn't know because it's not in there. And so, and he said he would try to answer, and one of the boys there, of course, being the hero for the girls, is telling him he needs to shut up and learn to listen and all this stuff. All this is going on in the classroom. I said, what was the teacher doing? Oh, well, no, she didn't do anything. She doesn't really like controversy. I'm like, I think she's about to have some controversy with me because I feel like I need to go up there and talk to her. Of course, she may tell me it was different than what he thought was happening. But in that situation, if the teacher wants to allow the conversation to continue, the appropriate thing would be to do is stand there and be a mediator in it. Let him say his, let her say hers, and keep it calm. Or tell them, hey guys, we're not having this conversation in class right now and we're not talking about it. But to allow certain students to shout down somebody else.
Well, and I agree, and that's why I asked the question. Now, if this is a debate class,
yes,
and we're bringing up topics, okay, I understand. But if this is an English class,
yeah. Well,
what relevance does that question have to do? Yeah. That's what I'd like to know. How did you just come up with that to get the lesson over today?
And he likes that teacher, and he defends her like, oh, she's just trying to allow us to have conversations and stuff. But some of the topics and stuff she proposes are controversial topics, and if you're going to propose those conversations, you need to allow both sides to speak.
Yes, and you should facilitate it properly. That's your job.
I agree. I agree with that. But anyway, I think we've said what we can say about this CVS thing. This is something that's just going to get worse and worse, and it's going to be a threat to our freedom of speech, which they want to get rid of anyway.
Absolutely.
The First and Second Amendment.
Our freedom of speech.
Yes, our freedom of speech, for sure. Certain people have preferred liberties, or they have liberties that we don't have. You know, women used to have liberties we don't have, but not anymore, right? Because we can have all.
We're taking it back, baby.
Yeah, we're just like, hey, they're doing some stuff we'd like to do.
You just thought this was a male-dominated world,
dude, man. Anyway, let's move on from that story. I know this wasn't what we talked about in the Lost podcast. I was just trying to freshen it up a little bit because I have a hard time talking about subjects we've already talked about, but I know you were looking at those other ones as well, so I say we switch over to our legislative madness discussion that we were going to talk about. And I was up on this a couple of weeks ago. Now, I haven't looked at it since, so we'll be looking at this anew together, kind of like you just looked at that last stuff with me. So in legislative madness, in Baltimore, they're trying to pass a new law. I'm assuming it still hasn't been passed. It's just up. Have you heard anything new about it?
No.
As far as I know, now by the time you hear this, we may know more. It's a bill they're trying to pass. It's called the Youth Accountability and Safety Act. And this is in Baltimore, Maryland. And suspects under 25 could not be charged with an extra crime like felony murder under a new Maryland bill. So what the deal is, if someone under the age of 25 commits a crime and somebody dies, that's considered felony murder. Well, this happens a lot in Baltimore, Maryland. And they're saying if someone under the age of 25 goes into a convenience store with a gun, with the intentions of just robbing the store, things get out of hand, he shoots the clerk, he dies. Or they're escaping and a police officer jumps in the way and they hit him with a car and he dies. That's felony murder, but they cannot be charged with that anymore under this proposed bill. What do you think the push is behind this?
Outside of securing votes from a certain political party, I don't know what else you could come up.
But those would be criminal votes, and these felony people cannot vote. I don't understand.
Well, you have this whole surge about defunding the police. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in a place like Baltimore, where you really need more officers, when you really need more help, this is their only answer because they've gone to this woke platform of like, well, that's just too much. We need to calm down crime by taking police officers off of the force, and we need to offer incentives for our young generation. Say, hey, it's okay if you go out and do this because until you're 25, you don't have to worry about it. So there's no accountability, even though it's in the bill.
Yeah,
and there's no deterrent to take this type of crime off of the streets. You're really just you're really endorsing it, basically. And who comes up with this number?
Well, see, that's the thing I'm thinking. You're making things unsafe for your constituents in the area. Who wants there not to be any punishment if their husband goes to work at the convenience store and some guy comes in and kills him? His life's not valuable because this kid didn't think it through. I watched a deal the other day about that 14-year-old who walked that girl off into the woods and stabbed her to death. I don't know if you've seen that before. He's 14. I guarantee you his brain's not developed. I can think of some of the stupid things I did at that age that I wasn't thinking straight. But he's still accountable for his actions. Sure. And to say he's not says that little 13-year-old girl had no value.
Right.
Or her value's not as valuable as what he's got left in his life. Yeah, I don't understand this type of legislation. I don't understand constituents that would be like, oh yeah, I'm happy my representatives are making sure that we're less safe in our community.
Yeah, and it's horrible when you think about it, especially the 25 is what throws me off. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. You can't get anyone that's rational with a sane mind to believe that if you're 24 years old and you rape somebody and kill them in the act, that you didn't know what you were doing, you didn't understand it, but a year later, then you all of a sudden had this great epiphany and said, oh, you know what, that's not right. Well, that's stupid.
I think they're basing it on this scientific thing where they're saying now your brain is not fully developed till you're 25.
What does that have to do with murder?
I know.
What does that have to do with murder?
It doesn't. And the fact that my brain's not fully developed, but you can draft me to go to war. My brain's not fully developed, but in some states I can just go down and get marijuana. You know, I can go to the liquor store and drink as much as I want to. And in some states they're wanting it to be, oh, I haven't hit puberty yet, but I can choose to take puberty blockers and mutilate myself. Mm-hmm. Which we know that most of these people that are for this bill would be totally for letting 12-year-olds decide, to mutilate their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's insane. So I can't make a good decision until I'm 26 years old, but I can make whatever decision I want to whenever I'm a teenager.
It's crazy. And it goes along with, everybody knows what's going on with, is it Bernie Madoff, that he gets all the credit for putting money into systems to hire these woke and very liberal DAs that are against crime, or at least against punishing crime. Anyway, and it goes along with that. There's a lot to do with, like I said, recycling your voting population, but most of this stuff that's driven, we know the problems in Baltimore, at least most people do. Mm-hmm. However, in that area, there's very affluent people there. Yeah. And a lot of this stuff is basically coming and endorsed by a bunch of white liberal that supposedly, what happened to the white devil?
Yeah, well, man.
So I think there is definitely and I know we try to stay away from this because we do kind of overplay the racial aspect, but I do believe there's a very strong racial component behind this.
Well, there is in one way. I think it's an ideological component.
Yes.
If you have certain ideals that, they're coming after you. A lady justice took off her blindfold pretty much. Did you see the guy who, during the 2016 election, had put a meme up that said, hey, Hillary supporters, skip the line and text blah, 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 whatever. Text these numbers, go Hillary or whatever. And it had his profile picture had a Trump hat in it and everything. It was an obvious joke. He's going to do jail time for that. I guess they're saying that he blocked people from going to the polls. It was not a real thing. Anybody with a brain cell wouldn't do it. But there's a woman who did the exact same thing for Trump supporters to text this to vote by sending in a text message. Did not even have anything in there indicating that it might be a joke. They said you can still see that tweet on Twitter, and she's not being prosecuted for what she did. That's selective justice.
It is.
So, that's what we have now. We have selective justice, and our judicial system's becoming an arm for the liberals, basically, right now, to just take out whoever they want to. I saw on The View, which I don't watch The View, guys. Like I said, I watch YouTube, which is also evil, I'm sure. But a clip from YouTube about The View, where one of the ladies they had on there was saying Trump's not really going to do any time. He's probably not going to get caught on any of these charges, was trying to explain it. And I don't know the lady's name, but I guess one of the ladies on there used to be a prosecutor or something. She was saying that no, he will do time and he is going to get prosecuted because the prosecutor's jobs now are to make a statement. It's like, well, we're not upholding the law and just making sure the punishment fits the crime. We're going to make statements with people.
you can go and look who it is. Most people will know, but there's a reason why she's doing this, and she's no longer a prosecutor. Okay, you do your research on that.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but I think we can all agree that this law would be unjust.
That's the whole thing. I looked and tried to find some type of argument in favor of it that I could say, oh, well, maybe I could kind of see that. I can't find anything. This is the whole argument is, like you said, it's a scientific, well, your brain's not developed. Yeah. And I'm like, that's just stupid.
Well, then let's not let you make any decisions for yourself, because your brain's not totally to that point where it can make the best decision possible. The decisions I made in my 30s, I wish I could go back and remake. Old people have regrets all the time and sit there and think, man, why did I do this? Why was I prideful at this time in my life? Why did I think this way? Older people have regret about decisions they made all the time when they were older than 25 years old.
Yeah. Why don't you change the voting age?
If
that's the case.
Oh, dude, we should definitely do that. But they're trying to push that voting age down to like 13 because you've got a whole group of kids in high school that are being indoctrinated by their teachers to vote a certain way.
Exactly.
They want a voting block right there for sure.
I think that is the true measure of what's driving things like this, to be honest with you.
Inconsistency with their argument drives me crazy sometimes, Scooter. Okay. Now we have another story here. It's going to be, this is in Washington State, so don't get confused. This isn't Washington, D.C. The first time I heard this was happening in Washington, I just assumed this was a national thing. And this is not just Washington. There's several states putting together these same type laws, but this is I believe it's called Senate Bill 5599 in Washington State. And basically it allows the state to take your children away from you if you don't agree with certain things such as their gender identity. If you have a child that runs away, like if they were to end up in a shelter and they said they were there because their family didn't give them gender affirming care or didn't help them with their reproductive rights and all this stuff, that whenever the parent goes looking for the child, a parent that has not harmed this child, just disagrees with this worldview, is looking for their own child, the state will not tell the parent where the child is. The state will take responsibility for the child.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It's insane. It's allowing them to steal your children, basically.
Yeah. It's the government knows how to raise your children better than you do.
Yeah. Matter of fact, let me just play this little clip, and it explains the legislation a little bit better.
We believe it is better to have a young person in a shelter with some adult supervision than having them out living on the streets.
Governor Inslee voicing support for a new bill intended to protect trans youth. Senate Bill 5599 passed the Senate, House, and is on its way to the governor's desk. The law would allow shelters to not contact a young person's parents if that young person is after, quote, protected health care services. That includes gender-affirming treatment.
That is what this bill is intended to do, to ensure that these youth have access to safe housing.
Legislation that has been widely criticized by the right, including the chairman of the Washington State Republican Party. He fears the bill is overreaching.
The law already outlaws abuse, and you could call CPS, and we certainly want to protect children. But we think this bill goes too far in taking loving parents away from important, significant decisions that teens are making.
The bill is intended to lower the barrier of entry to shelters for trans youth. Critics argue it leaves parents in the dark.
That is in the bill, that if a teen runs away and a loving parent is trying to find where their teen is at, the state will not tell them. And as a parent, that's terrifying.
The governor says he's still awaiting a full briefing on the legislation, but in the meantime is voicing support.
If a young person is totally estranged from their parents, has no meaningful relationship, we need someone to care for that child. And the way the legislation is set up is essentially the Department of Children, Youth, and Families will step into that position to care for that child. So you have somebody looking out for their benefit.
Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
Who determines if they have a meaningful relationship with their parents?
That's a good question.
He said that, and I thought the Republican senator made a point that we already have laws on the books that protect children from abuse. That makes me think that they're just going to start labeling this abuse.
Probably. I mean, well, how else could you go with it? You have to justify not contacting somebody.
Because you wouldn't contact them if the child come with scars all over them and with evidence of abuse. Yeah, you're not giving them back to the parents, but you're going to hand them over to CPS at that point, and you're going to get them with somebody that take care of them. They're having to add this in to protect them from parents that don't have the same ideas as them.
Well, it's all done with smoke and mirrors, and you hear. I guess that was the governor that you played,
and he's gonna sign it if he hasn't already signed. I'm sure by the time you hear this, he has signed it.
And no one in their right mind, I would think, would have any problem with providing an actual safer place for a teen actually coming from abuse, as opposed to being on the street. But the problem is, like you said, who defines that? What is safe?
Yeah,
where are we getting that? Who defines what abuse is as far as mental and physical? We have a pretty good handle on that. But my goodness, all of us that have children, you're going to make some decisions that your kids are not going to agree with. I know my parents made a lot, and I didn't like it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. How many teenagers agree with their parents most of the time? Or
you just going to run away and tell them, well, I don't feel safe at home because my mother won't let me stay out after midnight on the weekend. Oh, well, then here's a place for you. You can go out and stay as late as you want.
And their brains aren't fully developed yet, Scooter. So
good time to go out and commit murder. You got several years before you get there.
I'm just saying, how can they? Seems like they should just bow to whatever their parents say, because their parents have brains that are over 25 years old. You know what I'm saying? The government should be telling them, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't make a good decision."
And you see the contradiction.
Oh man, they have no consistency in their arguments at all across the board.
And I don't see how anybody can argue that the government could provide a safer
and not
environment for a loving family that actually cares and is devoted to raising their children. Even if ideologically they disagree on things, that doesn't mean that environment is no longer safe. That just means it's not what the kid wants, and that's just being a brat.
And they're passing it down to the taxpayer as well. They're also not considering that. It's like, oh, well, now we have to take on the burden that this family who's dealing with a difficult situation. It would be really difficult for your child to come out and tell you, they're a female in a male's body, or vice versa, or whatever. I personally, would not like if my kid's watching something, he wants to pretend like he's one of the girl characters. We ain't watching that show anymore. I'm gonna give gender affirming care by affirming the gender my child was born with.
Thank you.
I don't know. It's a different worldview where they think that you're actually causing harm to this person. I look at it like you're causing harm whenever you go along with it.
And it's a recruitment tactic. Yeah. It's really what it boils down to.
Well, it's irreversible harm in some situations. Yeah. You're blocking this kid's puberty. They're acting like, oh, we'll just years later, we can take them off of it and they'll go through puberty. That does not happen the way it should.
Yeah.
And there's too many videos now of like these young girls that mess themselves up and all this stuff, and they're wanting to go back and they can't go back.
Yeah. And, and the mental, not just the physical, but the mental aspect of how much damage that can be done, the emotional side of it.
I saw this poor little girl that was bald now. Of course, had her breast removed, all those things, and she regretted every single thing she did, and it's irreversible at this point. Her voice sounded like a male voice because she started on the testosterone and stuff really early on. That you talk about being in a spot where you're probably going to be more suicidal. I think you're going to be in that spot there.
Sure. And also I like to say I'm against, a big thing, or what a lot of places, states, organizations have used to combat these issues is conversion therapy. I do not agree with conversion therapy, because that in and of itself has its own issues about what type of mental and emotional and scarring it can happen. But there are ways to address this.
I don't know anything about conversion therapy. I haven't looked it up. It seems like you would need a biblical
that's
approach to this at all. But the problem is, people don't submit themselves to biblical authorities anymore.
No.
If they did, if they were Christians and they were having these thoughts, you could say, okay, let's look. What does the Bible say? Who's right, you or God? And then they would have to know, well, I'm in the wrong here. And then they could start working their way back. I saw an interview with a guy the other day that was a homosexual, that he talked about his experience of going into a church. He said he thought it was going to be kooky and the worship music. And he said that day he heard the sermon, he believed, he went forward his life totally changed. He said he did not care if he ever touched another person ever again because he knew what he was doing was wrong. He was confronted with his sin. He talked about his conversion experience. It was very moving. I thought maybe it was a recent thing, but he said that was 13 years ago. And he was talking about how he read the whole Bible, and he said every word was true to him. He said he read Numbers. You know, that's what you need. You need a new heart. Mm-hmm. You need to know that your sin is not what you want. You want God, you want to be free from sin, and one day we will be free from sin, right?
Yes, and as a parent, that's my responsibility to my children. Now, when they grow up and reach the age that society will call them an adult,
25.
I hope it's not that long before they move out, but you never know. But I would think at that point in time, I'm not going to agree with what they may do, but I have to accept the fact that this is now their choice. But while they're under my house, as far as the normal, what we would call the average role of the parent, let's just say baby to 18. Okay, that's a good number. I think most people will agree with that.
Yeah.
That's my role. That has nothing to do with the state. And if my kids don't like it, I'm sorry. I'm still called by God to instill these type of values. Now, what they do with them when they leave, that's not mine. But it's certainly not up to the state.
No, especially when they're under your care and you're not abusing them.
Exactly.
You just have a different view from the state on it. The state's saying you're wrong. They're making a moral judgment on you and saying that you're wrong and determining that you're doing something to harm your child. Mm-hmm. That's ultimately what they're determining, that what you're doing in your house is harming your child, so we don't have to give them back to you. So how long before it goes from when your child runs to them, they don't have to give them back, to they come to your house and take your child from you?
Probably not very long.
I wouldn't think so.
Within a matter of
either.
a year or two at the most.
Man.
And these shelters, has anybody ever actually been to a shelter, what we consider homeless?
I haven't, but I've heard bad stories about some.
I don't see how you could describe that as, the only thing you could say was safer. It's probably safer there than being actually out under a bridge with another 500 homeless people.
Maybe people get attacked in those shelters all the time,
they do.
Too. You know, I've had people working in a trauma ICU. I've had a couple of different people that got head injuries in the shelter. Nobody knew what happened. Come in, their head had been bashed against the floor or something.
You got raped. Most of them have really no security.
Yeah.
And you're not going to let, you probably have a staff of maybe one or two. What are they going to do if things get out of control? They're going to take care of themselves, which I don't blame them.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know, Zach.
I think we all have to move to states that have common sense, and then we put walls around them and we secede from the union. It's almost like we need to be broke up into two different countries. It's like the East Coast and West Coast can be together, and everybody in the middle can kind of be together. You know,
build that huge wall.
A huge wall. We might let you fly over our space, but really we suggest you fly up through Canada and around to California. You know, we don't really want those planes flying over our.
Or maybe move everybody to the west of the fault line in California,
and then wait for the big one.
Just set some explosive in there. Let's split that fault down and just make one big island.
Oh yeah. Well,
don't want to hurt anybody, but just make their nice little one big island out there. But anyway, it's ridiculous. One quick thing before we move on.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the monetary aspect. We can take that even back when we were talking about the CVS story. Mm-hmm. You talked about the therapy treatments, okay to miss work and all that. Are insurance covering these? And if so, how can insurances afford that unless they pass that on to me and you as far as insurance prices and things of that nature?
Yeah.
So,
well, in my experience, insurance doesn't pay much anymore anyway, or they try not to pay anything. You got to fight with them over it. Let's see here. Got one more story. I think most people have heard about this reparations task force. I saw a deal with it in Sacramento, and the big deal, San Francisco, they're really pushing for this as well. Okay, so here's a proposal that's being submitted. This is basically for anybody that has ancestors that were in America that were slaves, right? And in San Francisco, this is the proposal they have right now. They said $5 million in payments to every eligible black adult, elimination of personal debt and tax burdens. So they're not going to have to pay taxes, and we're going to totally eliminate their debt. I thought we did that when we gave them $5 million, but maybe I'm wrong, right? Guaranteed annual income of at least $97,000 for 250 years.
Wow.
The joke's on them, though, because $97,000 is going to be the price of a hamburger in about 10 years. Oh, and they also want homes in San Francisco to be sold to each family for $1 a family. A house, and I don't know what the average real estate price of a house in San Francisco is, but I'm assuming it's more than $1.
It's certainly more than 97,000 as well. So,
you know, when I really think about it, I was assigned white at birth, but I feel like I should have been assigned African American at birth. You know, that's my personal inward feeling, and I've always wanted to move to San Francisco. So this could be I think things are looking up for my family.
yeah. I say a whole new business. I mean, we should just start our own business where we can kind of doctor some papers for people and charge a fee. That we can take you all the way back to
the doctor. I was misassigned at birth white on the deal. They misassigned it. That's not who I really am on the inside. You see where I'm going here, Scooter? Yeah. So I should be, I feel like, several of my ancestors were in the country at the time of slavery, and they felt the same way. So I think I see some money coming to my bank account here. Let me see. I've also got, let's look at this real fast. I think this is Larry Elders responding to this. Let's hear what he has.
Pete, Larry, this is outrageous. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's racist. But it's not surprising it came from California. On the day of MLK's birthday, we're talking about a racist program to benefit individuals who happen to be black, $5 million. California was a free state. Who's going to pay for it? Why should they get $5 million? Because of skin color? It's insulting. It's racist. And I'll tell you right now, this state a couple of years ago tried to pass Prop 16, an old version of affirmative action. It lost, even though that meant that there were sane Democrats who knew it's unfair to benefit one group over another because of skin color. One last point. Somebody said, judge a person by the character of his conduct, not the color of his skin. And that is a person that we should be following, not giving people $5 million based on skin color. It's outrageous. Pete, Larry, this is outrageous. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's racist. But it's not surprising it came from California. On the day of MLK's life.
Okay, that's where it started at. Yeah, that wasn't Larry Elder responding. That was Leo Terrell.
Leo 2.0 Terrell.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, so that was his response to what was going on there. What was the popular statement now? And I think there's shirts that says, imagine a state that never had slaves taking money from people who never owned slaves and giving that money to people who never were slaves.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a popular statement going around. I don't know if Larry Elder said it or if one of these other guys said it. I thought I had the clip in here somewhere.
Well, even though sorry to interrupt you,
go ahead.
But if you look at not that clip, but the news clip that was taken out there in California, you'll have one lady that even goes so far as to say that she didn't have to go through, or her family had to go through things like people in Mississippi had to. So she's able to draw that distinction. Yeah. Now, of course, she points out things
I saw
that were not right, that did show racial prejudice, as everyone did. But like you said, this is a free state.
Well, she was talking about things such as like the white farmers had wells. And I don't know if she's saying, I assume she's saying it's because they had their family hadn't been slaves at some point, or maybe the system favored them at some point. I don't know. I come from poor white people that, didn't have stuff either. So I don't know. It'd be like me complaining that, we didn't have 1,000 head of cattle, but the people around us had 1,000 head of cattle,
Well, and that's
somebody go back and fix that for me, because if my granddad had 1,000 head of cattle and he had 1,000 acres, I'd be better off right now.
Oh, exactly.
But it didn't happen.
It didn't
Scooter.
happen, and you can't go by that. And that's what Leo is saying here, basically, that he's not for this in any shape, form, or fashion. But if anybody was to try and have a beef and want this, then he could. Then, like Mississippi, people are actually affected directly by actual slavery.
Yes.
Not a group of people that truly are just going off color of skin, and that's all it is.
Well, we're all affected by everything that happened before we came. Every single one of us is, and none of us have any control over it. None of us control who we're born to or where we're born. There's been plenty of white kids that were born out of wedlock. You know, mom left them in a dumpster somewhere, and that's how they started their life. They could spend the rest of their life complaining about that situation and how they didn't have the leg up like Donald Trump's kids did, but neither do we. We don't have that either. All we can do is affect what's coming after us. And if you look in the Bible, God put people where they were for a purpose. When Moses was born, what happened? They were killing all the kids his age, the little boys up to 2 years old. They were killing all of them. His mom put him in a basket, floated him down a river. Now, then he was given a hand up because guess what? He was in Pharaoh's court. He was given education. God put him there for that purpose. He started out humble. He was humbled again. I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching on that parallel, but I think it applies. And it is horrible that racism happened in the past. It's horrible that people were made slaves. Mm-hmm. Yes, slavery was horrible. Nobody's ever going to say it's not horrible. But look at what happened through Christianity that ended slavery. And yes, there's some growing pains that are going on, but I honestly think we pushed past it. Now, I'm not going to say there's not effects of it that still linger, that certain people are in certain areas because of it, but
and let's
be better, do better now.
Well, let's not also focus on slavery as being just a color issue, because primarily throughout the course of history, it didn't have anything to do with color.
Well, yeah, but in this instance, we're talking about American slavery is what they're wanting to give this reparations for. So I understand slavery's been a worldwide problem. There's been plenty of white people. You know, they say Slav slaves. You know, it was white people that were originally labeled that throughout history. But through the Bible, through Christianity, we know that slavery is wrong because people were in the image of God. We have corrected that problem. Now, if you're saying if that hadn't happened, you would be living as a king in Africa right now, go over and look at what's going on in Africa and praise God that you're in America right now.
Yeah, you know? Not a lot of kings over there.
No, you don't want to be in the Sudan right now. You don't want to be in those countries where they're warring, where the Muslims are coming through and just killing Christians by the hundreds and thousands. But I don't want to be on that soapbox, Scooter. I don't want to be on that soapbox. But do you know what are any potential issues with us just giving $5 million in a house? And
where are you going to get the money?
Yeah,
and who are you going to take it from?
That is an issue.
And also be careful what you wish for, because you know the Native Americans, they got some pretty good choice of land from our government, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
So they were taken well care of. Taken care of.
And that's the thing. If you want to give people reparations, I say write a check right now. Send it. Let's start a fund for reparations to give back to people that were taken advantage of in the past, even though none of those people still live. But let's write the biggest check. Write how much of your income that you're willing to give every year to this fund, and we'll take that fund and we'll divide it up. We'll figure out who had family members that are slaves, and we'll divide it up. I say that's fine. You could do that's charity, but what they're wanting to do is theft.
Mm-hmm.
They're wanting to take from people to give to someone else. Mm-hmm. The whole problem with socialism, it's not charitable. Christians in the first century, they didn't consider their possessions their own. They shared them. Everybody shared, and they gave as needed. But they did it out of a charitable heart. They were not mandated to do it.
And what you touched on is really it's going to be the biggest problem with this whole issue is where do you get the money and who decides who gets it? Because at some point in time, the well's going to run dry. So now you have to change those who qualify for it, right? Because the money's shrinking, so therefore those who can get it, that pool has to shrink. So it's maddening. It's maddening.
Now, here's where it's going to be a little fuzzy here, because I put these Bible verses here 2 weeks ago, and I knew what I was doing with them, and now let's try to figure them out. I said, what does the Bible say about reparations? I think it's for them. As far as let's read the first verse I have. It's in Exodus 21, and you can pretty much read the chapters of 21 through 22, and it tells you how people should be compensated when they're done wrong. Let's call it restitution and not reparations. How about that? Hope I've been speaking in my microphone this whole time. I feel like I'm leaning past it. If a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it over, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution. He shall give money to its owner, and the dead animal shall become his. So if you dig a pit and you, by accident even, kill somebody else's animal, you owe them money. And when he says the dead animal shall become his, I guess he gives it back to them so they get the meat and everything off of it. And then Exodus 21, it says, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it and sells it, he shall pay 5 oxen for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. I guess they decided it's a bigger offense to steal an oxen than it is a sheep.
Well, back in those days.
So
you don't see too many sheep pulling plows.
This is restitution. A wrong was done. They're paid in advance. They're paid back. Well, these are both Old Testament examples. Like I said, you can read 21 through 22, and it keeps giving the conditions for if you wrong somebody, this is what you must do for them. So I think this is true. And it says in Luke 19, this is where Zacchaeus had climbed up in a tree, and he'd come to see Jesus, and Jesus come in, and what'd he say? Zacchaeus, you come down now. You remember? For I'm going to your house today. Okay. We used to do that in Vacation Bible School all the time. Well, when they see that he's come down and Jesus is taking him, they saw it, and they all began to grumble, saying, he has gone to be a guest of a man who is a sinner. But Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have extorted anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house. He too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, but Zacchaeus found Jesus, right? He said salvation has come to your house today. His salvation did not come from giving these things, but that is the heart of a person that's saved by Jesus, right? And so he's given half his possessions, and he said anyone he's extorted anything, he's going to give them back 4 times as much, because we know tax collectors at the time would take more than they needed, or they would just get more out of the people. As you can tell, they knew he was a sinner. They said, this man's a sinner, he's going to dine with him. And Jesus said, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. He's justifying why he's doing this, right? Because they're saying he's a sinner, and he's saying, I've come for this purpose, for sinners, and I'm saving sinners. But this is not the same thing. I think the problem, we answered this question by saying what the problem was with reparations. It's not giving out of a heart where that's giving, but they're wanting to steal from us, to give to someone that we never wronged. I can't do anything about what my ancestors did, and I'm not responsible. It's not a generational sin where I'm responsible for what. I'm pretty positive I had nobody in my family who ever owned a slave. Maybe there is, and even if you went back and found one, I still don't feel responsible for their actions. I totally say that's wrong. Stay away from my money. That's my point. No, but yeah, I think that's why I put this verse here. Like I said, guys, this has been several weeks since I put this on here, but I think this definitely shows restitution. The Bible's for it, right?
Well, and you just made a perfect argument against the welfare system in general.
Oh yeah, it should all be charity.
Yeah,
and I think there are people we should help. I think when you got kids that are being abused by their parents and need stuff, I think a home should be opened up. Food, clothes should be provided, you know.
Which is the responsibility of the church.
Which is welfare, but it's charitable welfare. I think a lot of taxation's theft. Some people would say every bit of it.
Not all. But
I think
there are some things that we should be taxed to pay for, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff, just like you said, it's nothing more than theft.
Yeah.
And this is just a big example of what it would be. But you know, it's in California. I'm not going to say what I think.
But I think ultimately, if we're going to give a biblical answer to a cultural problem here, we're going to say the Bible's definitely for restitution. It would be for reparations. You've wronged somebody, go out and make it right. If you stole from somebody, give back to them more than you took from them, is what it's telling us. And this is how a Christian will respond. It's the overflow of what they've been given. He was given salvation through Jesus, and he's like, take it. Take it. This stuff doesn't mean anything anymore. So I think we talked everybody's ear off this week, Scooter. So I say, if you haven't witnessed to somebody this week, witness to somebody. And if you've witnessed to somebody, go and find somebody else to witness to, and have a good one.
God bless you.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. And until next time, keep styling and profiling. UC Cast out.